Welcome back to the kitchen lab. For this experiment, you will be needing some clothespins, food coloring dye, some toothpicks, 100 milliliters of water, 600 grams of sugar, a pot, and as well as cups. So you're first going to set your pot to medium heat and pour in the water as well as the sugar, and afterwards you're going to stir them in so they mix well, and you will stir these until they start to boil. But after it boils, you want to add in 1 to 2 drops of food coloring dye. You don't want to add too much because then it'll be very difficult to actually see the crystals form. And afterwards, you want to set it aside and let it cool down for 8 minutes. So after the 8 minutes have passed by, you want to get your toothpicks and your clothespins, because we want to set them up so they can be ready to be used, and we want them to look like this. So what we're going to do here afterwards is we're going to get a cup, and I'm just demonstrating how we're going to pour it in when we have our mixture ready to go. So one tip is to dip in your toothpick once it's ready like this in water and dip it in sugar, just so it could be much more easier for the sugar crystals to grow. So we are now ready to pour in our mixture, and so we want to get our cup first, and then we pour in our mixture. This is after the 8 minutes, of course, and then we will put in our toothpick that we have prepared beforehand. And I'm just going to be showing you a 2x2 side of what it will look like if you were to put too much sugar and too much food dye. Hello and welcome to the kitchen lab. So I will be explaining the science behind the sugar crystals. First things first, we have to know what crystallization is, because this is what we focused our experiment on. So crystallization is having our liquid, such as our water here in this case, go from water, of course, to a crystal state, which were the sugar crystals, and of course that was because of our high concentration of sugar that we had with our water. So as we know, we ended up using way more sugar than water. As you could tell, at first it was a little bit hard to stir in, but eventually it did work out once it got to boil. So because we used a lot of sugar compared to water, that means we have a much higher concentration of sugar. So these molecules got to interact with each other, and afterwards, when we pour it into our cup and we let it rest for about a week, the water molecules evaporate. And when the water molecules evaporate, that means that they are no longer there, they have left. And what's left behind still is the sugar molecules. And so these sugar molecules continue to interact with each other, and because of this, they pass by each other, and of course, since there are no water molecules, they start to stick to each other and start to form what we see as the sugar crystals. So I challenge you to also maybe come up with an idea that may speed up the process of the crystallization forming, and to maybe even try it out with different ingredients such as salt. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and thank you so much for tuning in. See you next time.